Sophia, a 30-year-old woman, led a tranquil and fulfilling life alongside Marcelo, the love of her life since their college days. From the moment their eyes met, an unbreakable connection was forged. Now, after 10 years of marriage, they shared more than just a home. They shared dreams, laughter, and challenges. Marcelo, a man of few words, expressed his love for Sophia through acts of kindness and a quiet dedication that spoke volumes. They lived in the house Sophia had inherited from her late mother, a spacious property in an upscale part of the city. For Sophia, this house was not merely a collection of walls. It was a living repository of childhood memories, shared laughter, and tears. Every corner of the residence echoed stories of past generations. There was a water stain on the ceiling that Sophia had asked Marcelo to fix, but he never got around to it. One day, an unexpected event tested the strength of their marriage. A man, a doctor with ambitious plans for building a hydroelectric plant nearby, knocked on their door. The area was becoming increasingly valuable, attracting a steady stream of workers and consequently raising property values. The doctor, seizing the opportunity, offered an exorbitant sum for the house, $1.5 million. For Marcelo, the offer was tempting. It was a sum he had never imagined possessing. For a moment, the idea of an even more comfortable life sparkled in his eyes. However, for Sophia, the offered amount was insufficient to compensate for the loss. "Marcelo, you don't understand. Every part of this house reminds me of moments I shared with my mother and siblings. How can I put a price on that?" she expressed, her eyes welling with emotion. Marcelo, realizing how deep Sophia's attachment to the house was, tried to argue pragmatically. "Sophia, think about the future. We can buy another house, maybe even a better one. This money could change our lives." "It's not about the money, Marcelo. It's about our history, our memories. I can't simply sell them," Sophia retorted with a firmness that surprised even herself. This disagreement marked the beginning of a tumultuous period in their marriage. Harsh words were exchanged, and for a time, separation seemed imminent. However, the love they had for each other and the years they had shared allowed them to find a way through their disagreement. Meanwhile, the water stain on the ceiling only grew larger. Over time, Marcelo began to see the situation from Sophia's perspective. One quiet evening after a homemade dinner, he took her hands in his and said, "Sophia, I understand now. This house is more than bricks and mortar. It's a part of your soul. I should never have thought about selling it." Sophia's eyes softened, filled with gratitude and love. Relieved and moved by Marcelo's understanding, Sophia hugged him tightly. "I love you, Marcelo. Thank you for understanding," she whispered. From that moment, the idea of selling the house was abandoned. Strengthened by this challenge, Marcelo and Sophia continued to build their life together, rooted in the love and memories they shared in that house. The decision to preserve their home not only saved their marriage but also reaffirmed their commitment to valuing what truly mattered: family, love, and the home they had built together. Although Marcelo had agreed to forego the offer for the house, he couldn't help but have the figure of $1.5 million linger in his mind, haunting him during moments of silence and reflection. To him, this amount represented more than just financial security. It was the embodiment of his unfulfilled desires and secret ambitions. Despite never voicing these thoughts aloud, a growing resentment began to fester in his heart against Sophia, fueled by his silent greed. As the months passed, he maintained a delicate balance, carefully avoiding the topic that had almost torn them apart. However, their tranquility was abruptly interrupted by an unexpected event. Vania, Marcelo's mother, suffered a fall at home, resulting in a broken arm. Given the severity of the situation and Vania living alone, Marcelo decided to bring her to live with them, a necessary decision that promised to change the household dynamics. "Sophia, my mother is going to need us now more than ever. I know you two have your differences, but I need your help to take care of her," Marcelo said hopefully. "Of course, Marcelo. She's your mother, and I would never leave a family member in need," Sophia replied, hiding her reluctance. Living with Vania had never been easy, and the prospect of having her in the house indefinitely brought an anxiety that Sophia struggled to conceal. Days turned into weeks, and Vania's presence began to weigh on the household. With her broken arm, Vania was limited to sedentary activities, spending her days watching television and engaging in long conversations with neighbors. Her presence significantly increased Sophia's workload, who now found herself overwhelmed with additional household chores. Despite the extra effort, Sophia kept her frustration to herself, choosing silence over conflict. On the other hand, Vania was dissatisfied with almost everything. "This food is tasteless. You don't know how to cook like I do," Vania complained constantly, failing to acknowledge Sophia's efforts. One afternoon, after an especially challenging day, Sophia confided in Marcelo. "I'm trying my best, but your mother isn't happy with anything I do. I'm exhausted," she admitted, her voice heavy with fatigue. Marcelo, realizing the burden his decision had placed on Sophia, felt torn between loyalty to his mother and love for his wife. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was this difficult for you. I'll talk to my mother," he promised, determined to find a balance. As days turned into months, the tension in Sophia and Marcelo's home became increasingly palpable. Vania's physical improvement did not bring relief to the heavy atmosphere that now dominated their home. Marcelo, in his growing indifference, failed to fulfill his promise to talk to his mother, leaving Sophia to bear the brunt of the situation alone. The truth about Marcelo was harsh and simple. He had no interest in confronting the situation with his mother. The convenience of his routine was his priority, and Sophia's feelings were relegated to a secondary concern. Although Vania's arm was healed and she could return to her own home, she continued living with Sophia and Marcelo, leaving Sophia increasingly distressed. Exhausted by the constant demands and the lack of support, Sophia decided to confront Marcelo. "We can't go on like this. I'm tired, and your mother. She simply doesn't respect our space, our home. She has her own place. Marcelo, why does she have to stay here?" Her voice, though weary, carried a tone of desperation. Marcelo, however, resorted to crude emotional manipulation, trying to appeal to Sophia's sentimental side, fully aware of her tendency to empathize. "She's old, Sophia. Living alone at her age is dangerous. We are all she has," he said, his voice devoid of genuine concern. Marcelo saw the situation as a double convenience. His mother was cared for, and his domestic needs were met without any effort on his part. Once again succumbing to emotional pressure and her own empathetic nature, Sophia reluctantly agreed to let Vania continue living with them. This decision, however, was made with a heavy heart, knowing her mental and physical health would continue to be sacrificed. The following months were marked by a vicious cycle of exhaustion and resentment. Sophia, now more isolated than ever, felt like a stranger in her own home. Vania, exploiting the situation, became even more demanding, criticizing everything from the food to the cleanliness without offering any help or gratitude. Marcelo, in turn, sank into a state of convenient apathy, completely disregarding his wife's well-being. Sophia grew increasingly despondent, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that had now grown into a large blotch. Each passing day made the emotional chasm between her and Marcelo more evident. The man she had married now seemed like a stranger, someone who prioritized his own comfort over her happiness and health. Marcelo's indifference was not just a momentary lapse. It was a revelation of his true character. Confronted with this harsh reality, Sophia began to question the sustainability of her marriage. Loneliness and exhaustion became her constant companions, shadows that followed her through a house that no longer felt like home. The love and respect fundamental to any relationship had dissipated, leaving behind only disappointment and regret. In this bleak scenario, Sophia faced a crucial crossroads: to continue living in this cycle of neglect and disrespect, or to find the strength to make a painful but necessary choice for her own health and happiness. The hope for a better future had become a thin, almost invisible thread in the worn fabric of her marriage. As time passed, Sophia's health began to decline alarmingly. Constant nausea and dizziness became her daily companions, forcing her to spend long hours lying down or sleeping in a desperate attempt to find some relief. However, this change in her behavior was not met with concern or empathy from Marcelo or Vania, but with accusations of laziness and neglect. You spend the whole day in bed while my son works hard. The house is a mess. This is no way to live, Vanya reprimanded, her voice sharp and unforgiving. Loaded with disdain and devoid of any concern for Sophia's condition, Marcelo echoed his mother's complaints as soon as he walked through the door. I can't believe I come home from work to find the house in this state. Where's dinner? Why are the dishes still in the sink? He barely glanced at Sophia, his irritation overshadowing any trace of compassion he might have had for her. Sophia, though weakened, tried to explain the severity of her condition. Marcelo, I feel really sick. It's not just laziness. Something is wrong with me, she pleaded for understanding, her voice weak and trembling. However, her words fell on deaf ears, both Marcelo's and Vanya's, who seemed more concerned about the inconveniences caused by her illness than about Sophia herself. In an effort to resume some semblance of normalcy despite her persistent symptoms, Sophia attempted to take on her household responsibilities. But this act of determination only worsened her physical state. One day, the effort proved too much, and she fainted on the couch. Witnessing the scene, Vanya cast one last accusation of laziness before walking away, leaving Sophia alone in her distress. When Sophia regained consciousness, the gravity of her situation became undeniably clear. Driven by a sense of urgency, she went to the hospital. There, the doctor's suspicion of pregnancy brought a flicker of hope to her heart. Despite the challenging circumstances at home, the idea of bringing new life into the world offered her a moment of indescribable joy. However, this hope was abruptly shattered by a negative pregnancy test. Subsequent exams revealed a much darker reality. Sophia had advanced stage cancer. The news hit her like a devastating blow, plunging her into an abyss of despair and fear. What initially seemed like a simple illness had turned into a fight for her life, a battle she would have to face with little to no support from Marcelo or Vanya. The cancer diagnosis forced Sophia to confront her mortality as well as the fragility of her relationships. Marcelo, the man she had chosen as her life partner, had failed to provide the support and understanding she so desperately needed. Vanya, instead of stepping into the role of a maternal figure in a time of crisis, chose condemnation over compassion. As Sophia began her arduous journey through treatment, the advanced stage diagnosis cast a cold shadow over the already tense family dynamics. Initially, both Marcelo and Vanya expressed concern and promised support, a facade of care that soon began to crack under the weight of reality. The challenges of chemotherapy, with its relentless nausea and weakness, made Sophia dependent on friends and relatives for her hospital visits. I really wish you could come with me once, Marcelo, Sophia said one evening, her voice frail but full of hope. I know, love, but you understand how demanding work is right now. I really need to focus, Marcelo replied, avoiding her gaze. Guilt pricked at his conscience, but not enough to drive a change in his behavior. Vanya, on the other hand, took over the household chores with an air of reluctance, her actions laden with silent resentment. Every glance she directed at Sophia carried a tacit judgment, a silent critique of her inability to maintain the previous routine. As Marcelo distanced himself more and more, the emotional and physical strain on Sophia grew increasingly unbearable. The once warm and loving home had become a place of cold indifference and silent suffering. Sophia's fight for survival was overshadowed by the stark realization of her husband's and mother-in-law's true characters, leaving her to grapple with her illness and the deep emotional wounds inflicted by those she had once trusted most. Returning home late and avoiding any depth of interaction, Sophia found herself increasingly isolated in her pain and suffering. The loss of her hair and the pallor of her face became visible marks of her battle, but to Marcelo, they seemed to be uncomfortable reminders of a reality he wished to escape. Sophia, I'm trying, but it's hard for me too, Marcelo confessed one night, his words sounding hollow in the heavy silence between them. I need you now more than ever, Sophia responded, tears framing the pain and loneliness in her eyes. Not just when it's convenient or easy. Marcelo's withdrawal became more apparent, with his excuses for coming home late growing increasingly flimsy. Extra work again, he would say, avoiding Sophia's gaze, which no longer had the strength to confront his lies. Meanwhile, The water stain on the ceiling grew larger and began to leak whenever it rained. As the side effects of chemotherapy became more visible, altering Sophia's appearance in ways she never imagined, a dark change occurred in how Marcelo viewed her. Sophia's hair loss, a devastating side effect of the treatment, became an unexpected turning point in their relationship. For Marcelo, it was a constant, uncomfortable reminder of Sophia's illness, a reality from which he seemed to want to escape. Every time Marcelo looked at Sophia, the absence of her hair brought forth a mixture of discomfort and detachment, emotions he barely understood and could not handle. Though he never verbalized these feelings, the shift in their relationship dynamic was palpable. Shared moments dwindled, conversations became superficial, and the emotional intimacy that once united them seemed to have vanished. Marcelo began spending more time away from home, justifying his absences with work or other obligations. These justifications, however, did little to mask the underlying truth. He was losing interest in Sophia, not for who she was inside, but because of the external transformation forced upon her by her battle with cancer. The reality that the superficiality of his affection was being exposed by Sophia's illness added another layer of sadness and isolation to the already heavy burden she carried. The harsh truth of her situation hit Sophia with full force. She realized she was not only fighting a devastating disease, but also facing the indifference and abandonment of those who should have been by her side. The illness had revealed the fragility of her marriage and the superficiality of Marcelo's commitment. In this increasingly desolate environment, Sophia found some comfort in the presence of friends and relatives whose unconditional support illuminated her darkest days. These moments of kindness and understanding stood out as beacons of hope, showing her that although the journey was lonely in many aspects, she was not entirely forsaken. Confronted with the harsh reality of a distant husband and a fight for her life, Sophia began to contemplate the idea of drawing strength not from those who failed to support her, but from her own resilience and the community that formed around her. It was a small solace amid the storm of challenges. Sophia's journey through her battle with cancer took a darker turn when the doctor announced that the chemotherapy was not effective in stopping the progression of the disease. Sitting in the cold consultation room, she listened intently as the doctor, with a voice filled with empathy, explained the situation. The words were a blow, shattering any remaining hopes she clung to and plunging her further into a profound abyss of despair and fear. The grim news was a stark reminder that what initially seemed like a simple illness had transformed into a life-or-death struggle, a struggle Sophia now realized she would have to face with scant support from Marcelo or Vania. This stark realization forced Sophia to confront not only her own mortality, but also the brittle nature of her relationships. Marcelo, the man she had chosen to be her life partner, had failed to provide the support and understanding she desperately needed. And Vania, instead of offering a motherly presence in a time of crisis, chose judgment over compassion. As Sophia embarked on the arduous journey of treatment, the advanced stage diagnosis cast a cold, foreboding shadow over the already strained family dynamics. Initially, both Marcelo and Vania expressed concern and promised support, a facade that quickly began to crack under the weight of reality. The relentless nausea and weakness brought on by chemotherapy made Sophia dependent on friends and relatives for her hospital visits. "I really wish you could come with me just once, Marcelo," Sophia said one evening, her voice frail but full of hope. "I know, love, but you understand how demanding work is right now. I really need to focus," Marcelo responded, avoiding her gaze. Guilt pricked at his conscience, but it wasn't enough to drive a change in his behavior. Vania, on the other hand, took over the household chores with an air of reluctance, her actions laden with silent resentment. Each glance she directed at Sophia carried a tacit judgment, a silent critique of her inability to maintain their previous routine. As Marcelo distanced himself more and more, the emotional and physical strain on Sophia grew increasingly unbearable. The once warm and loving home had become a place of cold indifference and silent suffering. Sophia's fight for survival was overshadowed by the stark realization of her husband's and mother-in-law's true characters, leaving her to grapple with her illness and the deep emotional wounds inflicted by those she had once trusted most. The sad reality that Marcelo and Vania were more concerned with their own comforts than her well-being was a revelation that added to her isolation and grief. Sophia now faced a crucial turning point. Continue enduring this cycle of neglect and disrespect, or muster the strength to seek a path towards her own health and happiness, even if it meant making difficult, painful decisions. With a voice full of empathy, the doctor explained the concept of palliative care. Sophia, we've reached a point where we need to focus on your quality of life rather than continuing aggressive treatments, he said, offering a look that combined compassion and sadness. So, does that mean? Sophia hesitated, the weight of the situation beginning to press down on her shoulders. It means we'll do everything we can to ensure you're comfortable and free from pain. The doctor continued, trying to provide some comfort amid the devastating news. The words, "a few months to live," echoed in Sophia's mind like a funeral bell, signaling not only the end of her treatment, but also the beginning of a countdown to her inevitable farewell. When Sophia shared the news with Marcelo and Vania, she carefully observed their reactions. Though they appeared shaken, the absence of tears on their faces spoke volumes about the emotional distance that had grown between them throughout her illness. Amid the turbulence of her emotions and the relentless advance of her condition, Sophia found solace in the frequent visits of her relatives and her dear friend, Sarah. Sarah, in particular, became an unwavering source of support, openly crying for her friend's pain and doing everything possible to be by her side. One quiet afternoon, as the house was cloaked in silence and Sophia stared at the leak in the ceiling, she overheard Vania on the phone. "She will pass away soon. I'm already tired of taking care of this house. At least then, I'll get some rest." Vania's words, laden with cold selfishness, didn't surprise Sophia. She had long sensed the burden her presence placed on her mother-in-law, but hearing these emotions spoken so cruelly brought a fresh wave of pain. As for Marcelo, his absence became more pronounced. His brief appearances at home were marked by a feminine perfume that didn't belong to Sophia. This realization added a new type of suffering to the already heavy burden Sophia carried. The unaddressed betrayal left an indelible mark, eroding what little strength she had left. In her moments of solitude, Sophia reflected on her life, the choices she had made, and the people she had let into her heart. The reality of her imminent departure forced her to confront not only her mortality, but also the nature of human relationships. The unconditional love from Sarah starkly contrasted with Marcelo's indifference and Vania's resentment. As Sophia navigated these final chapters of her life, she found a strange peace in accepting her fate. She knew that although her story was coming to an end, the true love and friendship she had experienced with people like Sarah would remain her legacy long after she was gone. This thought, though small, offered her a glimmer of light in the darkness of her final days. In the darkest moments of her illness, Sophia became an involuntary spectator of Marcelo's and Vania's true natures. Confined to her bed and dependent on a wheelchair, she witnessed a reality that tore at her heart more deeply than the cancer. Their careless conversations, conducted in her presence, revealed the raw, unfiltered truth of their characters. Their conversations revolved around plans for the inheritance and the sale of Sophia's house, revealing a callous disregard for her situation and feelings. Vania, with a glint of greed in her eyes, spoke of her grandiose plans to visit Paris, delighting in the potential profits from selling the house. "Imagine, Marcelo, as soon as Sophia is gone, Paris will be my first stop. The city of lights awaits me," she mused aloud, treating Sophia as nothing more than an obstacle to her leisure. Marcelo, not wanting to be outdone in insensitivity, shared his own dreams of traveling to the United States, visions of extravagance dancing in his mind. "And I, mother, will finally see the States. The house is now valued at $2 million. We're about to make a fortune," he said with a disturbingly misplaced smile in Sophia's solemn room. The revelation that Marcelo had already started the process of selling the house, using the power of attorney Sophia once trusted him with, was a blow that left her stunned. However, the universe seemed to have a twist in store for Marcelo's greedy plans. When he attempted to finalize the sale, he encountered an unexpected legal barrier. The house, it turned out, wasn't solely Sophia's to sell. It belonged to a broader circle of her family, a detail Marcelo had arrogantly overlooked. Sophia's mother had wisely included other relatives in her will, distributing the property among more than 7 people, including Sophia's siblings and some cousins. These relatives, all comfortably well off, had unanimously agreed to let Sophia live in the house, as she had been their mother's caregiver in her final days. This collective ownership rendered Marcello's and Vania's plans futile, their dreams of extravagant spending dashed by familial loyalty. Upon learning this, Marcello and Vania's fury knew no bounds. "All for nothing. We won't get much out of this," Marcello exclaimed, boiling with frustration. Vania, equally enraged, lamented her shattered hopes, her greed laid bare. For Sophia, witnessing this display of avarice and betrayal from her bed was a sobering confirmation of the true characters of those she once considered family. Their lack of empathy and compassion, coupled with their eagerness to benefit from her death, was a painful but enlightening revelation. It shattered any illusions she might have had about their intentions and loyalty. Marcello and Vania, impatient and disillusioned with the slow progression of Sophia's illness, no longer hid their discontent. Their hope for a swift resolution to Sophia's tragic situation waned as she remained stable, defying the doctor's initial predictions. One day, in a moment of carelessness, Sophia caught fragments of a conversation that confirmed her worst suspicions. Through the crack of a slightly open door, she heard Marcello planning his departure, counting the days to claim his share of the inheritance. "When she dies, I'll come and take my share. It's not what I expected, but 200,000 will still help," he said. Words that pierced the silence in Sophia's heart with calculated coldness. Marcello glanced at the ceiling and saw the large water stain caused by the leak. He thought, "Good thing I didn't bother fixing that," and left Sophia's house. After Marcello's departure, leaving her alone at home, Sophia, feeling defeated, turned to the one person she knew she could trust, Sarah. With tears and a trembling voice, Sophia confided in her friend Sarah about the painful betrayal of Marcello and the abandonment by Vania. Sarah, always the rock upon which Sophia relied, reacted with indignation and vowed to care for her with the dedication and love that true family offers. "Don't worry, Sophia. I will be here for you. Always," Sarah assured her with steely determination. In the days that followed, Sarah, along with Sophia's siblings and relatives, formed an unwavering support network. They took turns ensuring Sophia was never alone, caring for her with a devotion that transcended blood ties. The constant presence of loved ones transformed Sophia's house into a home filled with genuine warmth and human connection, something she thought she would never feel again. The care and attention she received filled her heart in a way that words could not express. "If I died now, I would die happy," Sophia thought, finding peace in the presence of those who truly loved her. Against all odds, a year passed. Not only did Sophia remain alive, but her hair also began to grow back, and a strange sense of well-being enveloped her. Sarah, noticing the improvement in her friend's physical and spiritual health, encouraged her to revisit the doctor for a new evaluation. Even the water leak in the ceiling seemed to have resolved itself, although the stain remained, a silent testament to the trials they had faced. Back at the doctor's office, Sophia faced the test with a mixture of anxiety and hope. When the doctor reviewed the results, his words were filled with incredulous astonishment. "Impossible," he murmured at first, before explaining the extraordinary turnaround in her condition. "You still have cancer, but it has regressed to such an extent that it appears to be in an early stage. It's a miracle," declared the doctor, sharing a rare piece of good news that few are fortunate enough to hear. Emotions overwhelmed Sophia as tears of happiness and relief flowed freely down her face. The prospect of having been granted a new lease on life filled her with immense gratitude. The battle against cancer had brought out the worst and the best in the people around her, giving her invaluable clarity about the immeasurable worth of true friendship and love. Now, with renewed hope, Sophia faced the future not as a dark horizon, but as a field of limitless possibilities. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would not be alone. The remarkable turnaround in Sophia's health brought a new hope to her life, a chance to start anew that she never expected to receive. After years of fighting a grueling battle against cancer, The unexpected regression of the disease opened new paths and possibilities. A final round of light chemotherapy, a last effort from her dedicated doctor, not only succeeded in regressing the tumor but also allowed Sophia to maintain her strength and spirit. With a renewed lease on life, Sophia embraced the future with optimism and determination. The hardships she endured had given her a profound appreciation for the true bonds of friendship and family. She knew that, with her unwavering support system by her side, she could face whatever came next with courage and grace. Her hair, a visible symbol of her recovery and renewed strength, grew back as the tumor continued to shrink. With each passing day, Sophia began to dream about the future once more. A future where she envisioned herself not just surviving but truly thriving. As soon as I am fully recovered, I will look for a job. I want to be independent and live on my own, Sophia shared with Sarah, whose unwavering support had been a beacon of hope during the darkest times. Financial dependence was something Sophia was determined to leave behind. The absence of Marcelo, though painful in many ways, had removed the primary breadwinner from the household, pushing her into a reality where she relied on the support of family and, most importantly, Sarah. However, this period of vulnerability also taught Sophia the value of community, true friendship, and chosen family. Life, however, always finds ways to test our resilience, as Sophia soon discovered. One day, while relaxing in the living room, a portion of the plaster ceiling collapsed, a physical reminder of past neglect. The plaster fell right on the water stain that neither she nor Marcelo had ever gotten around to fixing. The incident, though frightening, caused no injuries but underscored the urgent need for home repairs, a task Marcelo had never shown any interest in. Sarah, always ready to help, called a friend, Felipe, a handyman who promised to take care of the problem. When Felipe arrived at Sophia's house, he brought not only his tools but also his son, Julio, an unexpected presence that quickly became pleasant. "I'm sorry, this is my son. I had no one to leave him with today. Can I fix your house while he stays here?" Felipe asked, somewhat apprehensively. "Of course," Sophia replied, a smile forming on her lips for the first time in a long while. As Felipe worked on the ceiling, Sophia found herself engaged in warm conversations with both father and son. Felipe shared his story, the early departure of his wife after Julio's birth and how he, with his mother's help, was raising his son alone. Sophia was impressed by Julio's manners and maturity, even at such a young age, and by Felipe's dedication and love for his son. These moments of conversation and unexpected companionship proved to be a balm for Sophia's soul. She began to see Felipe not just as the handyman fixing a physical damage in her home, but as a fellow human being fighting his own battles, with stories and dreams that resonated with her own challenges and hopes. During the 3 days Felipe worked on Sophia's ceiling, the atmosphere in her home transformed. The daily presence of Felipe and his son Julio brought a joy that had long been absent from that household. Sophia realized how their presence brightened her days, an unexpected happiness that made her ironically grateful for never having fixed the ceiling before. On the last day of work, Felipe showed a kindness that deeply touched Sophia. Noticing that she was still recovering from the effects of chemotherapy, he insisted on helping her clean the house after finishing the repairs. "You shouldn't exert yourself too much," Felipe said, concerned. Grateful and somewhat surprised by such consideration, Sophia felt more appreciated by that gesture than by anything her husband had done for her in years. Wanting to somehow repay the kindness, Sophia ordered lunch for them. Sitting at the table, Sophia, Felipe, and Julio shared a meal full of laughter and pleasant conversations. It was a simple moment, but profoundly significant. This newfound camaraderie and the simple act of sharing a meal together brought Sophia a sense of belonging and happiness she hadn't felt in a long time. The experience reminded her of the importance of genuine human connection and the unexpected ways in which life can bring light into the darkest of times. As Sophia bid farewell, Julio's sadness at leaving Sophia's house was palpable. "Will I see that lady again?" he asked, his big eyes filled with childlike hope. Touched by Sophia's sincerity, Sarah quickly invited them to return over the weekend for lunch. Julio's joy upon hearing the invitation warmed Sophia's heart, solidifying the beginning of an unexpected and valuable friendship. When the time came for Sophia's next chemotherapy session, a surprise awaited her. Instead of Sarah, it was Felipe who showed up. Sarah had an unexpected event and asked me to come in her place. "I hope you don't mind," explained Felipe, somewhat anxious for her response. What neither of them knew was that Sarah had no such event. It was all a plan to bring the two of them together. Sarah felt the need to play Cupid with them. Felipe's company during the treatment turned an usually arduous experience into something bearable, even enjoyable. In the days that followed, Felipe and Julio's visits became a constant in Sophia's life. With each encounter, the connection between them grew, weaving bonds of care, affection, and mutual support. With the arrival of the day marking the end of Sophia's chemotherapy treatment and the confirmation that there were no more traces of cancer in her body, Felipe found the courage to express his feelings. Armed with a bouquet of roses, he made his declaration. "Sophia, you have brought light into my life and Julio's in a way we never imagined possible. I would like to know, will you date me?" The question, full of hope and vulnerability, found fertile ground in Sophia's heart. Touched by Felipe's sincerity, Sophia responded with a tearful yes. In that moment, she felt a fullness and joy she had never thought possible again. Sophia's journey, marked by challenges and disillusionments, had culminated in a new beginning full of love and hope. The destiny that often seemed cruel had revealed itself to be generous, weaving a new chapter in her life where love, friendship, and chosen family became her greatest blessings. Years had passed since Sophia had found hope and love again alongside Felipe. A new life had begun for her, one filled with happiness, care, and a family she chose and who chose her in return. During all this time, Vania and Marcelo remained on the sidelines of Sophia's existence, involved in their own lives and resentments, until the day they received a letter that promised to change everything. Reading that Sophia had died and that they needed to attend a meeting for the division of a non-existent inheritance, Vania and Marcelo could barely contain their perverse joy. "It took her long enough to die," Vania declared, her coldness chilling the blood of anyone who still doubted her nature. They went to the appointed place, expecting to finally receive the reward for what they considered to be a wait that had been too long. However, the scene they found could not have been further from what they expected. Instead of a solemn meeting to discuss inheritances, they were greeted by the sight of a wedding in full celebration. The bigger surprise came when Marcelo saw the deceased bride Sophia, radiant in her wedding dress, visibly pregnant, next to Felipe, the groom. The true architect of this bold plan was none other than Sarah, who watched the scene with a triumphant smile. The divorce papers, signifying his final divorce from Sophia, were handed to Marcelo. Humiliated and defeated, Marcelo and Vania hastily left the celebration, leaving behind any pretense they might still have had about Sophia's life. Looking at Sarah, Sophia burst into laughter, an expression of relief and joy for the freedom she had gained and the promising future that awaited her. Sophia knew that with Felipe by her side and a new member joining the family, her life was complete in a way she never imagined possible. The celebration of her wedding was not just a moment of joy, but also a symbol of a new beginning, free from the shadows of the past and illuminated by the promise of love, family, and happiness. On this day, Sophia not only celebrated her wedding with Felipe, but also the victory of truth and love over greed and betrayal, her heart full of gratitude for Sarah, Felipe, and everyone who supported her. She knew that regardless of what the future held, she would face it with the strength found in true love and unwavering support from her chosen family.